Hi students. So in this video I will be talking about filter function in Python. It is one of important functions that are available in Python. In my previous video I have talked about map function with examples, and these are the today's topics. So I will start with purpose of filter function, what it does, why we need this function, what is the problem for which this comes as a solution, and then its syntax. So obviously it will take some arguments, or whether it takes or not, what it returns. Then I will show you example, then how to use lambda expression inside the filter function. So in most of the cases when you use filter function, we use lambda expression or anonymous function instead of a normal function. Okay, so I will show you with example, then difference between map and filter, and it will help you to understand the concepts in more depth. And at the end, this is a bonus topic. So what will happen if you don't pass any function in the list of arguments? So obviously now you can realize that it takes some arguments. I have not talked about the syntax, but from this question you can understand that this filter function actually takes some arguments. So in that list of arguments, one of them is a function. So I have talked about higher order function in my previous videos. So what it does is, higher order functions are those functions that takes another function as its argument to perform some higher order operation. So the filter function is also a higher order function. Now I'll show you what will happen if we don't pass that function as its argument that it needs. If we don't pass, what will happen, what it returns. So this is the bonus point. So to know all the answers of these topics or question, stay till the end. So let's start with the first point, that is purpose of filter function. So to talk about the purpose of this function, I'll use this diagram to explain to you. So this basically the black box where all the operation, all the checking is being done, and this takes two arguments. Function one of them is function and another is iterable. So we have talked about iterable in my previous video. So it contains some elements, and what it does is, here actually in this black box this filter operation is done. So what it does is, this method applies this function, this is the input function, this function on each element of this iterable. Okay, and based on some criteria, so it will check if any element is returning true for that condition. Okay, and it will only consider those elements that are returning true. So it will scan those elements, all the elements, and it returns only those elements that are returning true. So what it gives as an output, it gives some specific elements from the whole list of elements that returns true from the function. So this is basically what is done inside the filter function. So I mean, in brief, it takes two arguments, one is function, another is iterable. It traverses through all the elements of the iterable, and it performs this function on each element of the iterable, and it checks if that element is returning true or not for that function. If it returns true, it considers that element, and if it returns false, it just discards that element. Okay, now let's talk about the syntax. So if you talk about the syntax, so this is actually the syntax of filter function. It takes two arguments. First one is a function and second one is an iterable. So what it returns an object, or you can say filter object, because we know these things. When we talked about map function, map returns map object and filter returns filter object. So what are these objects? They are nothing but iterator. So I have discussed about iterator in my previous videos. We know that iterator doesn't contain all the elements at a time. It uses underscore iter method, underscore next method to keep track of all the elements. Right. So this is how it works. And in place of this function, if we use a normal function, so we define that function separately and we just pass that function as its argument. But in most of the cases, we don't use a separate function for that, because that function has no separate use. I mean, we need that function only to implement this filter. So we use anonymous function or lambda expression to implement this filter function. Okay, so yeah, so that is the syntax. Let's talk about now an example. Okay, so I will show you two examples. First, let's start with the first one. So first problem is, we have a list of, let's say, 10 numbers 0 to 9, and then what we want to do is we want to extract only the even numbers. Okay, so let's say this is my function Diff, and my function name is extract. What it takes an iterable that contains all those elements, and it traverses through all the elements, and it checks if an element is divisible by 2 or not. If it is true, then it prints out that element. So it will this function will return all the even numbers. So if I run this, So let me expand this first. So from here you can see that it has returned only the even numbers from 0 to 9, 0, 2, 4, 6 and 8, right? So yeah, so the concept is we can use for loop to solve this problem, but why we need filter function? And the thing is, when you talk about functional programming, then we avoid these type of iterations, okay? Because we have, and that is the reason why we have these type of functions, map, filter, reduce, okay? So, and if we use these functions instead of for loops or any iterative method, so that actually makes the code more easy to read, okay? And this is the purpose of filter function, one of purposes, okay? So now let's talk about the filter function approach. So now the thing is, we have a list, so let's say my list, and what it contains, range 10, so 0 to 9, right? Now my result equal to, so first we have to define the function diff check even. So what it takes, it takes a number, right? And what it returns, it just checks if number modulus 2 compared to 0, then return true, else return false, right? We're done. Now here, as I have talked about the syntax, so my result is filter, and then first one is the function, so this check even, and second one is the iterable, so my list, right? And as I say, these will return filter object, right? So let me show you first. So python video 15.py. Oh sorry, I have not given any print statement, so print my result. So if I just run this, see, my result contains this object, filter object, and this is the address where this object is stored. So or nothing but an iterator. So obviously, as it is an iterator, so we can use a for loop to get all the elements. So for ld in my result, we can iterate through it, right? So just print ld, and we will get only the even numbers. So let me show you. See, 4, 6, 8, 0, 2. Right. Now the thing is, we can use also factory function of our sequences, like we have list function to get a list from it. So if I just use a list here, so what it will return? It will return a list of all the even numbers, right? And let me just comment out this. See, list of all even numbers, and this is the factory function of list. So yeah, so this is how filter function works, and this is the first example, and next example is the example I have chosen while I discussing map function. So I will take the same example to make you explain the differences also. So let me copy this first. So this was the example. We have a string, play with Python, and I want to extract only the vowels. Okay, so this was the function, and then these three are this one is the object, map object, list and set, and next thing is the same implementation using lambda expression. So I will copy all these things because I need the lambda expression portion also till this. So copy and paste. So yeah, this is the thing. So let me just comment out this first. Okay, now this is the second example. So we have to just replace this letter with true, and else or return false, right? And we are done. And here map, and in place of map we have to use filter, right? Okay, and let me show you the output first. So see, first one is the list of all the vowels, this one, and second one is the set, and third one is the object, filter object, this one. So it is doing actually what it does internally is it just performs this function on each letter of this string, and it checks if that letter is in this list of vowels, and if it is true, if the condition is true, then it returns true. And as you know, filter function only considers those elements that are returning true. So this is how it works. Now, so all examples. So these are the two examples. Now the next thing is I will show you how to use lambda expression instead of in place of this function. So now I will show you how to use lambda expression inside the filter function. So I will take the second example, like extracting the vowels from play with Python string. So my string is play with Python, and I want to extract only the vowels, right? Okay. Now the thing is, we will not use any separate function, because we know that if we are in such a situation where this separate function has no other use, like instead of using inside the filter function, it has no separate use or other use inside the throughout the program, then we should avoid such normal functions. We should use anonymous function or lambda expression to implement this. So first one, let's say what was the thing, my result object. So this will contain the filter object, so filter, and first argument is the function. So inside that function we are checking if any letter is even or not. Second example, so vowel or not, letter, how can a letter be even? So letter is vowel or not. So lambda letter, then true if letter in A, E, I, O, U, else false. We know, we have talked about all these things, lambda expression, in my previous videos. Just check that video first, then come here. So this is basically how it works. So this is the expression. We'll check if the letter is in the list of vowels, and if it is true, it will return true, and if it is false, it will return false, right? So and this is the first argument, and second argument is my string, right? So we should have the same result. This my result object should be the filter object. So if I print this, my result object, let me show you first. See, so this is the object actually that I was talking about, and if I want to use list, then the list of all the vowels. Okay, so this is how we can use lambda expression inside filter function. Now this this portion is done, and the next thing is I will show you the difference between map and filter, obviously with example. So to show you the difference between map function and filter function, I will take the same example. This is my string play with Python, and I want to extract only the vowels. So this is how we solve this problem. Here we are checking if letter is in the list of vowels. If it is true, then we are returning true, like boolean type, and if it is false, then we are returning false. So the only difference is, in case of my result list 1, we are implementing map function, and in case of my result list 2, we are implementing filter function. So let's see whether the outputs are same or not. See, outputs are different, and this is there is a difference just because their internal working. So how map works is, map applies this function on each element of this string, and the return value from this function, map considers that return value as it is, okay, and it generates a new sequence using those return values. Okay, that is the reason it has considered both true and false. So for vowel letter it has considered true, and for all the consonants it has considered false. So this is how map works. But in case of filter, we know that filter considers only those values that are returning true, and it doesn't consider the return value as it is. Okay, it considers the element for which the function is returning true. This is the difference. Okay, in case of map, it considers the return value as it is, but in case of filter, it considers that value for which function is returning true. It discards all the rest of the values that are returning false from that function. I mean this is the difference. Now if I just modify this function to make it like when I discussed about map, I have implement this function like this. So if it is vowel, we are returning that letter, and if it is not a vowel, we are returning none. So none is an object. We in Python we know these things. Okay, so now let me show you the output. So for all the vowels it is returning the letter as it is, and for all the consonants it is returning none object. Now if I now see the difference, now you can realize that, as I say, map considers return value as it is, so it is returning none, so it has considered none for all the consonants, and it has considered the letter for all the vowels. But there is a new concept, because none is considered as false in Python. Okay, and we know that any string or number except 0 all are considered as true. So in case of filter, it is returning that letter, so it is considered as true, so it has considered that letter in the sequence. But none, as you know, considered as false, so it doesn't consider that letter, so it has considered only the vowels. I can show you, why none is considered as false. So if I just do like this, if none and then a print statement working, okay, and else not working. Okay, so let me show you. See, not working because none is considered false, so else block has been executed. So this is the reason, why it has given this output. So yeah, this is how it works, how map and filter works. So basically what filter does is, filter applies this function on each letter of this iterable, and it considers only those values that are returning true from that function, and it doesn't consider the return value as it is. It map from any type to boolean type. So if we have returned, let's say, a string or number from that function, so it map that value, that type, to boolean type. So you know, strings are considered as true, numbers are considered as true, except 0 is considered as false, and we have a new concept, none is considered as false. So this is why we have got this result. Okay, so this is the difference between map and filter. And next thing is the bonus portion. So in the bonus portion, as we know, I have talked about the question. So what the question says, what will happen if we don't pass that function as its argument? So let's take an example. Let's say I have a experiment list, okay, and what it contains, let's say first a number, let's say 1 2, some numbers 1 2 3 4, then let's say 0, then letter A, then W, then none, okay, yeah, another none. Okay, now what I want to do is, I want to pass these iterable as one argument in filter. Okay, and in place of the function I will pass none object. So let me do this. My result equal to filter, and first is none, so I am not passing any function as its argument, I am passing just none object. None is actually its class is actually none type class, so this is an object in Python. It is considered as false. I have talked about this. So none, and second one is the my experiment list. Okay, obviously this will return filter object. Now if I just want to get a list, so let's see what I get. Print my result. See, so we have got a new list that contains the numbers, but 0 is not present, AW, but nuns, these two none value are not present. So what is happening inside this filter function? So actually what it does is, when we doesn't pass any function or we pass none object, so this filter function I mean gives a default function as its argument, okay, and that function is nothing but an identity function. So what does it mean? It means we know that it traverses through all the elements of this list. So in this case it will traverse through all these elements, and identity function means it will check if 1 is true or not, 2 is true or not, a is true or not, none is true or not. This is how it goes. And we know any number except 0 is considered as true, 0 is considered as false, any string, any letter is considered as true. And I have talked about all, in just a few seconds ago, that none is considered as false. So obviously what this function, that identity function returns, it returns true value for all these numbers, it returns false value for 0 and none. And this filter function only considers those values that are returning true, and it generates a new sequence using those values, using these values that are returning true, and it has generated a list. So this is how it goes, okay. And now so that's all for today. So I have covered all these topics: purpose, syntax, example, lambda expression, difference, and bonus portion. So all topics are exhausted, and I'll upload this file, all the codes. I will upload this file on GitHub, and I will provide you the links in description. You can download it from GitHub and use it. Now the thing is, so in my next video I will start with reduce function. So stay tuned. Bye bye.